Hey everyone, it's Brett Hornby here, and welcome back to my YouTube channel. Well, a follow-up from last month when I made that video talking about the Calgary Stampeders were in danger of missing the playoffs in 2024. Well, they followed it up by not making the playoffs in 2024. So, first time since 2004 in 20 years or 19 CFL seasons, the streak is over. The Calgary Stampeders did not make the playoffs this season, so changes were inevitable. Before going deep in how I feel about changes that have been announced already, as we are about to get into another run to the Grey Cup, if you want to follow along with this Calgary sports fans journey, just make sure you hit like and subscribe. I have my other social media links down in the description below. I mean, the Grey Cup has not been awarded yet. We just went into November for the 2024 CFL playoffs, and I already previewed my picks for the East and West semifinals. But the Calgary Stampeders have already made some recent news about who's going to return, at least on the sidelines, or not return on the sidelines with the Calgary Stampeders. And I think there's debate on was the right decision made. As President Jay McNeil, former Calgary Stampeders offensive lineman, first announced that head coach and general manager Dave Dickenson will still be head coach and general manager for 2025. Some people are feeling that maybe that is not necessarily the right move. Does Dave Dickenson, does he have too much on his plate? He does say that, he focuses more on the general manager side of things in the off season and has his advisors to work on it throughout the season, and focuses more on the coaching, and you do have a staff. And then John Hufnagel is still associated with the Calgary Stampeders, but he's just a senior advisor who works in the background. I mean, I think he's 72 right now, and I think eventually he is going to want to retire. He's in the Hall of Fame. He got inducted in the Hall of Fame a few years ago as a builder, and built his legacy as a player and even more as a coach and general manager with the Calgary Stampeders. So they're going to be back next season. So what do you think about head coach and general manager still being Dave Dickenson going into 2025? And is it still a good idea to still have John Hufnagel around in his reduced role as a senior advisor? So that was the first order of business. However, there's three coaches that will not be returning with the Calgary Stampeders next season. First is defensive coordinator in Brent Monson. You might not be surprised to think that that was one of the sore spots with the Calgary Stampeders this season, was our defense. We allowed, I think, the most, or the second most points in the league. We were allowing almost 30 points per game on average. And if you're allowing that many points per game, more often than not, you're going to be on the wrong end of it than on the right end of it. I mean, Calgary finished the season 5-12-1, and we were able to manage to win the last game of the season, at least on the road, so we didn't have an imperfect road record. But I'll footnote that the Calgary Stampeders were trying to not have that imperfect road record, and the fact that we were playing the Saskatchewan Roughriders. Yes, it was in Saskatchewan, but after when Winnipeg won the last game against the Montreal Alouettes, and when we knew Winnipeg was going to host the West Final, Saskatchewan instantly didn't have anything to play for other than not play hurt, so it was a glorified preseason game. But it's always nice to win on the right note. But wouldn't really say surprised that we are looking at changing the defensive coaches, especially when we still have players like Mike Alway Cam Judge, Julian Hauser, and then have Trey Roberson, James Vaughters, and Demery Houston. You think we'd have a better defense that could stop the run, but Brent Monson we're moving on from him, and he worked his way up in the organization for 16 years. Starting off as like the video coach, and then he was a linebackers coach. He worked under Corey Mace, who was the defensive coordinator after we had Rich Stubler, Chris Jones, Rich Stubler, for all his years. I mean, now Rich Stubler, unfortunately, passed away last year, but he was in the CFL pretty much forever. So you learn from those coaches, and now Corey Mace is actually the head coach of the Saskatchewan Roughriders now. But not surprised to see that. And then the linebackers coach from a couple years ago came on the staff, and former Calgary Stampeders player in John Simpson, who was a linebacker himself when he played for the Calgary Stampeders. They're moving on from John Simpson as well. So we're going to see new defensive coaches next year, and you got to wonder who could be available. Is it going to be a former player, someone else around the league that either is still kicking around and available, or could we potentially maybe find someone new down south? But Brent Monson and Dewan Simpson will not be back with the Calgary Stampeders on the sidelines next season. And then there's one more casualty. You could probably say it's a surprise, and I might be a little disappointed in Mark Killam. And I guess I apologize in the short. It's only spelled with one L in his last name. But the special teams coordinator and assistant coach, Mark Killam, who's been with the organization for 20 years, we're moving on from him, and I'm actually a little shocked and disappointed with that move, that he's not coming back. Because I kept thinking, if I had to say, I'm just football fan, CFL fan. I mean, I always like to say, well, I'll date myself, saying I've had season tickets for 27 years plus, that if I made a decision, I would have taken one of the hats off at Dave Dickenson and made him just general manager, and then promote Mark Killam as head coach, because I always kept hearing over the years that Mark Killam, he was always looked upon as a potential finalist to be a head coach somewhere else in the CFL, and he really worked his way up in the organization. I believe actually is, from what I found, he actually is from Lethbridge, Alberta. So you have a Canadian as well. And both Brent Monson, I think Juwan Simpson, as well as Mark Killam, they also were been involved in local grassroots football in Calgary, which is something that the Stampeders Foundation has been trying to improve on to get more Canadian talent. That's something that you hear that we're not as good at compared to other parts of the country, but we're going to move on from Brent Monson, Juwan Simpson, and Mark Killam. So what do you think of those changes? But surprisingly, you could say sort of, not really, that Dave Dickenson is still going to be the coach and general manager. I mean, Calgary, the last two seasons, we were 11-24-1. And I'm going to say we only made the playoffs last year in 2023 with a 6-12 record, which wouldn't have been good enough to make the playoffs this season, was because Edmonton was so bad that they looked like they were going to be 0-18 last year, but then after that crappy first half, they limped through to a 4-14 record, and we tied with Saskatchewan, who were 6-12, but Calgary won the tiebreak in the season series in a minute. Last October, with the two games that we won that were big, was the game in BC and the game at home against Saskatchewan, where we won that game because we made the big plays even though Saskatchewan played us, making the playoffs at 6-12, and we were in a lot of close games last season and even this season, but last season it felt like we were on the wrong end of more of them. I think we were still a strong 6-12 team that a few bounces out of the way, we could have been 10-8 or 9-9. But that's kind of like, if they still do that bell curve in a class where a lot of students fail the class, you can still pass with 30%. But then this season, looking back at this season, we did all right at home. We were still 4-1 at home, but then we were 1-8 on the road. But I felt that Ottawa game in Ottawa, and then Labor Day, that's when this season really went kaputs. And the coaching staff might be a part of it, but as you know, the team hasn't made any more announcements. That coaches that are still around will Pat Delmonico. And they're not too sure how the coaching cap works in the CFL, but I know that you have a lot more coaches taking on more and one role for that reason, because Pat Delmonico on the team, he was mostly just the offensive line coach, and then he became the offensive coordinator, but it's hard to say if he or Dave Dickenson makes the calls. And then, of course, what will probably wind up happening is actually Craig Dickenson, Dave's brother, the former head coach of the Saskatchewan Roughriders, before they moved on from him and hired Corey Mace. And actually, Craig Dickenson did actually start his coaching career in Calgary back in 2000. He was the special teams coach. I got a feeling that Craig Dickinson's going to probably be the new special teams coach, because he was kind of the coaching senior advisor working in the background this past year, which I think that might still potentially tick off some fans, because I've been feeling, based on what I read online, and I do feel a little bit that maybe it's time for a new voice at top, that I think we should have looked at potentially moving on from Dave just as head coach, still keep him around as general manager. And it feels like since the Flames bought the Calgary Flames, or the Flames bought the Stampeders, all part of the Calgary Sports and Entertainment, that the product on the field and the experience has declined a little. You cannot, I will stress, you cannot compare this to the F-Troop days from 2002 to 2004. That was very, very unique and more of a circus then than it is now, because some people are commenting that, this is just as bad as it. Oh, no. The F-Troop days was when we were owned by Michael Federick, because he bought the team late 2001 from Sid Gucci, after he saved the team from Larry Rickman, that was the first private owner that Stampeders had after we were just community owned. Well, Michael Federick was stable financially, but what made it more interesting was the fact that it happened to be Kevin Federick, the owner's son, was on the team. And there was kind of back and forth power struggle then, and I feel there's sort of the same power struggle now. But when you have the owner and his son had to be on his team, even though he wasn't a good enough quarterback to play in the CFL to have a successful college career, that's why Wally kind of moved on. And then Jim Barker said, well, I'm still starting Marcus Crandall over Kevin Federick because he gives me the best chance to win, because that's what a coach does. And then he was shown the door 2 days for Christmas, and we hired Matt Dunnigan. But I had more of an issue with Fred Viteri, how he ran the team. And oh boy, those were dark days with the Calgary Stampeders, with the F-Troop, Federick, Viteri. And then the fact that during the 2003 season, we had kicker Mark McLaughlin, who retired to become president. And then he came back to play because the kicker was no good, because Fred Viteri was shown the door. Then Fred Viteri came back to sue Michael Federick because he said he was owed money. And the funny thing is, if you search both these people's names, Michael Federick, well, he's from California and he's still a CEO of a company in California. And it does have a footnote that he did one time own the Calgary Stampeders. The bills were paid, but there was not at the sacrifice of on the field product, but there was those extra circus activities. And then Fred Viteri, it's like you hear nothing about this guy. You can't find anything about him. Is he still alive? Because the only thing you can find on Fred Viteri is a footnote that he was here with the Stampeders and he badmouthed Wally Buono and made asinine decisions. Wasn't best for the team. Team was more divisive, and then fans were pissed off, including myself. He was the bigger problem in my mind. And then thankfully, Michael Federick sold the team to a local ownership that was owned by the Verzani Group, and things turned around, and eventually the Flames owned it. And you can also debate about how the Flames are being owned, about how we're just embracing mediocrity, but I still feel there's still the same power struggle maybe with the team, but the fact that it's not the same thing. The only thing that I loved during the F-Troop days, and this is before social media, was I hurried home to listen to the Collins show, and then I was entertained by all the fans that were disgruntled about, oh, I've had season tickets since the Mawada days, and if this crap doesn't stop, I'm canceling my tickets. And I mean, the Stampeders played out in McMahon since 1960. Mawada was before then. So, and then you hear lots of fans still talking about potentially canceling their tickets. Well, I mean, they said ticket numbers have been flat, but it's been eroded in the last few years. I mean, you can blame it partly on the economy and the team, just declining after we've been successful so long. I mean, we made the playoffs for 19 straight seasons. This was the longest streak in professional sports in North America at the time, and longest active streak in franchise history, because the one before that was 13 years, where from 1989 to 2001, the Calgary Stampeders made the playoffs all those consecutive years. Most of those years was with Wally Buono as head coach. But I just feel that there's something that's just not quite lining up with the team, and I think there might be potential struggle. But the thing with football is you can still overhaul a team over the off season, and there's 32 free agents, and they're all not going to be coming back. I do also think the Calgary Stampeders should look at moving on from Jake Maier as quarterback, because I'm going to say he done a good enough job to be the guy, and unfortunately for Jake's sake, he happens to be the guy replacing the legend, which is Bo Levi Mitchell. And we saw good Bo definitely showed up in Hamilton. The team didn't make the playoffs this year, and oh boy, when we got destroyed in Hamilton when Bo put up over 400 yards. I think that was his career high. And you know what? Other fans did ask me, do you think Bo was a little arrogant? And I said, actually, yes. I admit, Bo was a little arrogant because he tried to strive to be the best. And he definitely sounded a little arrogant when he destroyed the Stampeders. I mean, at the time, it looked like he was declining, and Jake, he took over for an injured Bo and had 3 straight 300-yard seasons. But I'm going to say, not too sure if it's Jake or the play calling, but the offense was just too vanilla this year, about not going deep, always going for the run. And I still think we have a good running back in Dedrick Mills and Peyton Logan, and occasionally Cotton Hill moving on from Kadeem Carey. But Dedrick Mills had to take some time for personally came back, but the play calling seemed to have been too vanilla and too predictable. Kind of almost like when Kevin Frederick was quarterback, that he padded his completion percentage by all the short, low-risk passes. But I just think it's a combination. I'm not too sure about the right moves. And it's going to be interesting to see, depending on what the team does in free agency. And the team says they're going to be more aggressive in free agency, because past years it was usually we took care of a lot of our business, but we had a lot of great players that we lock up in the offseason that we want to keep. And either move on from some and just plug holes throughout the offseason. But I think this team needs to be aggressive in free agency. Let's say, for example, going back to when we moved on from the F Troop days to having local ownership. Well, going into the 2005 season, Calgary signed the 2 top free agents that season in bringing in quarterback then Henry Burris and receiver in Jermaine Copeland. And then we finally played the safe hire and hired Tom Higgins as head coach. And considering how stable coaching's been, I mean, after when Calgary missed the last 3 years, well, we moved on from Wally, or Fred Viteri made that decision easy for Wally to move on and go to BC to get the same role. We had Wally Bono, and then we had Jim Barker for the year that you see on TSN. He was head coach, and he had his struggles with the team and management. And then we had Matt Duggan, who was head coach and general manager in 2004. But since 2005, we've only had 3 head coaches. Tom Higgins from 2005 to 2007, and he did win Coach of the Year in 2005, but just couldn't get over the hump. Then we had John Hufnagel from 2008 to 2015, and then Dave Dickenson from 2016, at least on to 2025. And I just think, I'm not too sure about that move. I'm not too sure about moving on from Mark Killam. I'm pretty sure, I got a feeling he'll get a coaching job somewhere else, and then it'll bite us in the end if we don't patch things up. But the only other experienced potential coach I could see maybe coming on the defensive side, depending on what happens up at Edmonton, if they decide to keep their brass, because Jerry Jackson is their interim head coach, but they recently hired former Eskimo player with the Elks and Chris Morris, so you might have a different setup there. And they had a new ownership group, local owner, who actually is trying to invest in the team there. But the only experienced coach that I can see potentially come to be on defense to shake things up now that we have holes in our defensive coach is Mike Benavides. And actually he did start his coaching career in Calgary. He used to be the special teams coordinator on the 2001 team under Wally Bono. So if he still wants to coach, we could maybe bring him in. Not sure. But I think you're probably going to see potential former players. And the only other player I could think maybe that could come in as a rookie former player, I think he's still around in the market, that could be maybe a linebackers coach, is Keon Raymond. I'm just throwing this name out there. I'm just thinking who could be replacing, and the team still says maybe there could be more decisions to come. But I have mixed feelings about Dave still being the head coach and general manager. I'm not surprised by the defensive coaching changes, but I'm a little disappointed in not liking the Mark Killam moving on from him. I mean, our special teams coverage has been hit or miss, and we did get burned on some big plays, but that's been the case for the last few years. And when we've had a revolving door because of injuries of who's that returner, because I mean, since we had Larry Taylor and Roy Finch, and then briefly even Terry Williams, which is not the same Terry Williams that plays at the BC Lions now. We haven't really had a stud, returner that, I mean, I still say the best returner that Calgary had, that I've been around for, is Marvin Coleman, who actually he recently got inducted in the CF Hall of Fame this year, and I know predates me, but Henry Wiley. I mean, Calgary, can't think of when was the last time we had a stud returner that could break the game open. We don't have like a Mario Alford or Janarian Grant to put a threat, saying, well, he's on the field, watch out. But, I mean, it's our special teams coverage. We got burned by Janarian Grant and Camille Pimpleton, another player that found from the U.S. But I think that's what Calgary needs to do. But, I don't know. I just have my various thoughts and opinions. This can't be compared to the F Troop days, just by what I see on social media. I think it's controversial that we're keeping Dave Dickenson. I mean, Jay Neal says, well, he built up his record that he deserves to stay, but football and even in the business world, it's all about what you've done for me lately, and sometimes I get those lessons too. Even in the real world, it's I've done stuff in the past, but it's what have you done lately, and that's all I gotta say. I'm gonna still wait out this off season. I still plan to renew my tickets. So I'm not planning on, unless my life changes dramatically, like if I can't physically go to the game anymore, or let's say if an opportunity presents itself that I, leave Calgary, but I still plan to renew my tickets next season. But I've heard a lot of fans, both in terms of being disgruntled with everything, and some fans that have had season tickets longer than me, that they're getting older and say they just can't, go to the games anymore. And I know the few people that sit in front of me, the older guy, I know he goes with his wife, and then I see his son, and thanks to his son, he's a first responder, and his son or grandson, that guy said he's had season tickets and sits in a row in front of me. He's had season tickets for 39 years, and he's not thinking about renewing. And I noticed they missed half the games this year, so I'm going to say there's still some fans I see that still going to games. I think we'll still go to the games. I know there's a couple, and I think a mother and daughter, and that lady. Hey, Renee Ferreira's coming back. Let's go, Renee. See that lady every game, and I know my mom's friends with a couple that after the Grey Cup here in COVID, they haven't returned, or at least where I sat. So I have seen fans go away, and then they block the four corners in the stadium, so you don't get. It's been a while since we've actually had over 30,000 fans at a game. So it's going to be interesting. It's going to go. Hopefully there's no dark times ahead for the Calgary Stampeders, but I just think there's still some of the old boys club. Thankfully it's not F-Troop drama, but I'm going to wait up the season, see free agency, and I'll have to give next season to see a go. But I'm going to say if we have another season like we did last season and not make the playoffs in 2025, then there has to be more changes, including Dave Dickenson himself. He's not sure, he's not in the Hall of Fame yet. He's going to be in the Hall of Fame, at least what he done on the field. But not sure if you can say he's a builder Hall of Fame yet. Does have a Grey Cup as a coach, but it's my various feelings about the shake of the coaching staff. I am not sure. Be interested to see how things go. How many fans will come back? But we'll see. It seems like things are starting to get stagnant in Stampederville as well. So anyway, I just want to close out. If you want to follow along this Calgary sports fans journey, just make sure you hit like, subscribe. I have my other social media links down in the description below. What do you think about Dave Dickenson still being head coach and general manager of the Stampeders for 2025? John Hufnagel still being around as a senior advisor. And what do you think about moving on from Brent Monson, Joanne Simpson, offensive coordinator, linebackers coach, and special teams coordinator and assistant coach, and Mark Gillum? Or do you see them, as soon as next season, being employed somewhere else in the CFL once the off-season gets going for everybody? I'm going to still say I'm probably a Calgary Stampeders fan. Red's always my color. Go Stamps, go. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you in the next video.